Hello everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, 3 C's of Security Awareness. My name is Carol Auth of the SANS Institute, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speaker is Lance Spitzner of SANS Securing the Human. If during the webcast you have any questions for Lance, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface. We will be answering them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Lance.
All right, Carol, thank you so much, folks, for joining us. Today, we'll be talking about the 3 C's of security awareness. Now, Carol did not mention this is being recorded. So if you have to drop off at any point, not a problem, we've got you covered. Or if you want to share this recording or webcast with someone else afterwards, you will be able to. All right, so why the 3 C's of security awareness? Well, as the director of SANS Securing the Human on the training and content side, one of the things I've really been struggling with for the past couple of years is how do we solve this common problem? And by common problem, I mean at SANS Securing the Human, we work with over 1,000 customers. And I work with hundreds of security awareness officers every year. And especially last year, in 2016, I saw this common theme, these common challenges that we were all facing, or I should say almost all. And I tried to figure out a way, well, how can we package the solution in a concise, easy to consume, and easy to understand format? And that's what this is all about today. In fact, this whole concept of the 3 C's of security awareness is not just the theme of this webcast, it's the theme for 2017, at least for me. This is the message I'm really pushing out for the entire year. So with that said, let's jump right in. Now, first of all, what are we trying to achieve? Why am I talking about this? As some of you are already familiar with, this is the Security Awareness Maturity Model, developed, almost 6 years ago by a group of 200 security awareness officers. It helps you visualize and understand where your awareness program is and where you want to take it. Now, for some organizations that I work with, compliance is ultimately their goal. That's it. There's nothing wrong with compliance being your goal. But what I'm going to talk about here today is pumping up the volume, going above and beyond just compliance. Now, we want to ensure you're compliant, but how do we change behavior? How do we change culture? And how do we develop a framework to measure all that change? By the way, common misconception with this model, even though metrics framework is at the top there, that in no way implies we're not using metrics in the other stages. You absolutely are using metrics in every stage. It's just that to be truly mature, not only do we have to be causing a lot of change, but we have to be able to measure it. So where does the world of 3 C's fall into this? Well, first of all, let's go back to our ultimate goal. Ultimate goal here, based on this model, is to change behavior. By changing how people behave and the behaviors they exhibit, you can manage risk. Wouldn't it be great if there was somebody out there who had developed a model, spent their entire life on a simple model on how to do just that, change human behavior? Well, fortunately, there's some already that has done this. His name is Fogg, a PhD out of Stanford, and he's developed what he calls the behavior model, the Fogg behavior model. Now, some of you may have already seen this. The reason I love his model so much is he takes a big, challenging problem, how do I change behavior, and puts it in a very simple formula. In this case, as you see in the upper right corner, B equals MAT. In other words, to exhibit a behavior, someone's got to be motivated, they have to have the ability or enabled, and there needs to be a trigger or prompt. And so what the graph is saying, and this makes such good sense, the more motivated someone is and or the easier it is to do something, the more likely they're going to exhibit that behavior when they get a trigger or a prompt. And vice versa, the harder something is to do or the lower the motivation, the less likely they're going to do it. And what I've done for years now is whenever we struggle to get someone to change a behavior, I've always gone back to the model. Is it a motivation issue? Is it an ability issue? And things like that. And what I found was that there was this common cause of why people weren't changing behaviors. And this is where the 3 C's come in. And ultimately, what happened is this. The reason people are not changing behaviors because they're stupid or you can't patch stupid or things like that. No, it's not the people to blame. It is we within the security community to blame. We're not making security simple to understand. Instead, we make it complex and intimidating. So what we think is easy to do is really, really hard to do. We live and breathe security, so to us it's our passion, and we think everyone should be motivated, when instead, like I said, they're overwhelmed. And why? Why should they care? So we need to learn how to engage and communicate to people in their own terms. So long story short, the key thing this model teaches me is this. People are not at fault. People are not the problem. It is we in the security community who are failing the very people we're trying to secure. Now, why is that though? I know so many security awareness professionals that are passionate and want to make a difference. So we've got the problem. We're failing to reach people. We are the reason that people are not secure. What is the cause of that problem? Well, the cause, and this has really come to light with me in the past couple years, the huge light bulb went off when we started doing the annual Security Awareness Report. This is a community-driven resource where we, the community, develop 20 questions and we ask security awareness officers these 20 questions to get a feel, a snapshot of the awareness community. And the data we've been giving proves a very interesting point. And now what's really interesting is this. This screenshot you're looking at is actually from the 2017 Security Awareness Report, the report that has not been released yet. You're actually looking at raw data that no one has seen yet. I just pulled this out like about 2 days ago. And what this data is showing is this. One of the 20 questions we asked the security awareness community, and by the way, we had over 1,000 people take the survey, twice as many as last year. So more data, love it. And what we found is this. A continuing trend, this just reinforces what we had from last year. Over 70% of security awareness professionals have highly technical backgrounds. By technical, I mean things like physical security, information security, IT admin, webmaster, software development, things like that. Really, less than 15% had truly soft skills, things like marketing, graphic design, communication, human resources, and things like that. Then we kind of had, a certain percentage that was somewhere in the middle there, like legal, audit, compliance, but that could even be considered technical. Long story short, the vast majority of people in awareness have technical backgrounds. Now this is good because they, and I should say we, because I come from a very technical background. First 10 years in cybersecurity, I was doing forensics and firewalls, pen testing. So with that technical background, we understand the technology, We understand the problem. We also understand the behaviors we want people to exhibit. But the problem we face is this. It's called the curse of knowledge. The more of an expert you are at something, the worse you are at communicating it. We assume that people understand and use two-step verification, full disk encryption, or a variety of other confusing terms in technology. We assume they know what the cloud is and how to use it. So what ends up happening is sometimes by being an expert in a certain area, we are the worst at communicating it. The other problem is those of us in the technical background, we have very little experience on how to communicate. In fact, those of us that have a security background, we're told the best way to be secure is to say nothing. We're actually taught how not to communicate. So there's really two halves to the awareness world. We have to understand the technology and the problem and the solution. And those of us with the technical background, that's where we're good at. But where we're really missing and where the awareness programs fail is that lack of soft skills because we suffer from the curse of knowledge. Some of the best awareness officers I've ever seen, English major, graphic design contractor that started off just doing pamphlets and sheets, things like that. These people understand what they don't know. In other words, they'll be like, wow, this full disk encryption thing, that's kind of confusing. We actually have to explain this in a simpler way. So long story short, I am in no way saying if you have a technical background, you make a bad awareness officer. Not at all. Remember, I'm suffering from this. What I've learned and see is we with the technical backgrounds have to develop new skills. We have to go out of our comfort zone and we have to be able to engage and communicate with people. So one of the things I tried to do is, well, how do we do this? What areas do we need to focus on? And that's where I came up with this idea of the 3 C's. To really develop those soft skills, to change people's behaviors. Go back to the BJ Fogg model to ensure people are motivated and we enable them. We make security simple, easy, and accessible. It comes down to communication, collaboration, and culture. Like I said, if you don't have experience in this background, no worries. We're going to show you how to develop those new skills. But we need to first understand the underlying cause of the problem. Now, one other fundamental thing before we continue. If you want to really understand how to change human behavior, how to help people, I'm going to assume you like people. Now, this started off as a bit of a joke. When I would teach my 2-day class, and I still do, I'd always start with this. If you don't like people, you probably shouldn't be in my class. It's a bit of tongue-in-cheek, but there's an element of truth to this. Now, there's nothing wrong if you like being technical and just working with technology. That's fine. But if that's your personality, this is not the career path for you. You have to like talking to people, working with people, and helping people. If you are a firm believer that you cannot patch stupid, then I really recommend a different career path. So, moving forward, I'm going to assume you do like people and you want to better understand how to build a program that changes human behavior and ultimately culture. So, where do we start? Well, first of all, I'm going to go straight to the solution. Books are actually a wonderful source on those 3 topics. These 2 books have probably had the biggest impact on me on how I approach awareness. Now, these are in no way the only 2 books out there, or perhaps not even the best book for you. But for me, they made a world of difference. Leading Change by John Kotter. He's considered by far one of the world's leading experts on change management. He goes through and has done years and years of case studies in hundreds of organizations. How do you effectively affect change? And he's got a wonderful 8-step process. Made to stick. This is very popular within the security awareness community. Effective ways to communicate a message. And it's not about communicating a message, but communicating in a manner where it sticks with people long term. So, if you want some more reading after this talk or learn more about communication, collaboration, and culture, recommend these 2 books. All right, let's dive right in though. Now, ultimately, if you think about it, remember, we want to affect behavioral change. And B.J. Fogg says people have to be motivated and they have to be enabled. What that really means is communicate. In fact, what's interesting is I'm seeing organizations, many are moving away from the title Security Awareness Officer and moving to Security Communications Officer. Because when it comes to communicating and comes to that B.J. Fogg model, we first have to engage people. Why should I care? What's in it for me? So we have to engage. And you don't use statistics or numbers to explain why security is important. We have to engage at emotional level. And then we have to communicate in their terms, not ours. All right? Sometimes we think this is just easy to understand, and we get, how could they not understand? Well, go to your local doctor and have your local doctor start talking using medical terms. A lawyer speaking in legal terms. Poof, quickly goes over your head. That's how people feel when we talk. So we really need to know and understand our audience. And then finally, oh boy, folks, this is where we're so guilty. The whole idea of cognitive overload. We want people to be so secure, we throw every behavior and we throw every human risk at them, totally overwhelming them. What we really need to do is focus on as few risks as possible and make those behaviors as simple as possible. Let's go ahead and look at an example of each of these concepts. First of all, starting with, why should I care? And that's what we have to answer with. Remember, motivation. That's one of the key variables from that behavior model. And we just jump right in. I quite often see this. Awareness programs jump in going, do this, don't do that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Back up. First, why should they care? Why should they listen to you? And answering, because you have to, that's not going to stick. Remember our book, Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. By the way, they're brothers. So how can we do it? Well, I have found 2 real effective approaches, and they work together. First of all, security traditionally has been all about no. We are the department of no. We are about as popular as the legal team. Security is not about no, it's about yes, but how to do it securely. I love these security professionals. Never bank online using your mobile device, or never use social media. What is that going to do but just turn people off? We need to have a positive message that's all about yes, but this is how we can do it safely and securely. We want to be enablers, not blockers. So first of all, let's be positive. But the second, look at your existing awareness program right now. Identify the top 5, top 10 topics you are teaching in your awareness program. Now compare that to people's personal life. I bet 80 to 90% of the topics are the same because we use the same technology at both home and at work. We deal with the same threats and risks at home and at work. As a result, the topics are the same. Passwords, mobile devices, social engineering, email and phishing, and it goes on and on. So take a step back. when you start your awareness program, rephrase the why. Hey, this is not all about just protecting our organization. This is about protecting you, your family, and your home. This does two things. When you reach them at a personal level, you're engaging at an emotional level. You've now answered the question, what's in it for me? Because now they can create a successful, secure home environment, protect their kids, do more. So they're far more likely to listen and engage. But just as important, if not more, for your organization is now secure behaviors become part of their DNA. It's not like they show up to work and go, uh-oh, I'm at work. That means I need to put on my secure behaviors hat. No. By focusing on how they benefit at home, they now have the same secure behaviors both at home and at work. This simplifies things, more likely to cause change in behavior, but this is also becoming important for work environments as home and work blend. Bring your own device, working from home, social media and cloud. As the worlds blend, exhibiting secure behaviors at home and or with their personal devices becomes just as important as work. So from communication, we need to always start with the why. Why should I care? Know your audience. I'm going to go to the U.S. government for a fantastic example here. For years, the CDC had an awareness campaign on how to prepare for natural disasters. Turns out, does not matter what the disaster is. Earthquake, hurricane, flood, tornado, whatever. Prepare the same way. 1 gallon of water per person per day. Blankets, flashlights, things like that. No one was listening to the CDC's awareness campaign. So in 2011, one of the CDC professionals just did a small little blog on how to prepare for a disaster. All the blog did, and it's still up on their website, all they did was change the title of the blog, How to Prepare for the Zombie Apocalypse. 3 hours after that blog went live, the entire CDC network collapsed. It went viral. In fact, the CDC was forced to make an official public announcement 2 days later. And they had to officially state, actually, zombies don't exist. So as a result of understanding their audience and just changing how they communicated it, they did not change the actual behaviors. All they did was communicate in their own language, and boom, instantly resonated, and they really engaged their audience because they knew their audience. And finally, this is one of my favorite examples. Remember the BJ Fogg model. We've got to make things simple. We have to enable people. And let me give you a classic example of how our community has just totally messed that up. And I'm going to pick on passwords. And this is why. One of my greatest frustrations is every week I see the same thing. Some security professional arrogantly announces, people are stupid. We just had another release of cracked passwords, and the most common password is 123456. Obviously, these inferior beings simply don't understand, da-da-da-da-da-da. And the security community continually beats this drum, making fun of people for failing to change behavior. Whereas I'm trying to communicate, it's not their fault. It's our fault. Because what have we been telling people for years about passwords? Passwords are important. They must have at least 12 characters or 15 characters. They have to have an uppercase, a lowercase, a symbol, a number. You need to change it every 90 days. You need a unique account, a unique password for every account, and then mix in the blood of a virgin. All right? This is actually hard and complex. Now, you and I, we probably think it's easy because it's part of our daily life. But this is intimidating, scary, overwhelming. We are doing everything wrong here. So we think passwords are easy because we suffer from the curse of knowledge. We continue to have problems with passwords today because we've made them very complex. So in pursuit of creating the perfect password, we've forgotten that we're dealing with humans, and as a result, we have very broken passwords. However, the reason I'm excited here is the community is starting to recognize this and moving to what I consider a far better solution. You know what that is? Passphrases. The more characters you have, the better. We don't care if you have a number, if you have a symbol, upper, lower, just have lots and lots of letters. This is far easier to remember. This is far easier to type into, say, your Xbox, or type into your phone where you can't use copy and paste perhaps, things like that. So long story short, whenever somebody's not changing a behavior, take a moment and first, don't blame them. Take a look at yourself. Is it a motivation issue? Have I failed to communicate the why part? Have I failed to communicate the why part in their own terms? Or have I failed to communicate what to do in a simple manner? Instead of overwhelming them with 5, 6, 7 behaviors, can I just simplify it into one single behavior that is good enough? So motivate and enable, and it all comes down to communication. So that's the first of the 3 C's. But there's also a second, and that's collaboration. And I've never seen a successful security awareness program where the awareness officer did everything themselves. The most successful, the most mature awareness programs are done as a team effort, where really as awareness officer, in many ways you are the official cat herder, trying to get all sorts of people to get all sorts of things done. And we need to do this for 2 reasons. First of all, we need that feedback and buy-in from all of these people. They provide all this information, suggestions. Maybe you didn't realize that one department was using credit card data, and all of a sudden now you have to teach them new things. Perhaps they can help you to figure out how to engage, how to explain the why, how to communicate in their terms. Through collaboration, basically what this is going to happen is by collaborating with others, you will have far more effective communication. And where I see organizations doing this the best is by using something like an advisory board. And the whole idea behind an advisory board is you build a board of advisors, as it sounds, who are almost like the voice of the customer. Awareness is a product you are attempting to sell. The customer, the voice of the customer, are representatives of all the different people you will be reaching out to. But these individuals also bring all sorts of different expertise to help. Human resources. You want them on your advisory board because A, they understand culture, they understand your target groups, but they're also very often involved in enforcement. So if somebody fails to change behavior, that often becomes an HR issue. And then get those people with soft skills on your advisory board, such as from communications, marketing, or graphic design. I love graphic design people because if you think about it, a good graphic designer is somebody who communicates with images, not words. And quite often, imagery is one of the most powerful ways to communicate. You want legal, audit, or compliance on that advisory board to help ensure your awareness program meets compliance requirements. Remember, we started with this maturity model. At a minimum, we want you to be compliant. Help desk and security operations center. They can help you better understand what your biggest risks, dangers, the most recent incidents in your organization. Somebody from LMS or training. And then I always like to have a senior leader, your biggest and best ambassador or champion for your program. And they bring two things. One, a senior leader brings credibility to your advisory board and program, but two, they can help you shape the message and help you communicate to the rest of the leadership why your program is important and help maintain that leadership support. Another thing I've seen really successful is where organizations take this a step farther and they actually take somebody from the communications department and embed them in the security team. Remember, communications is the key here. Oddly enough, out of all the different departments in organizations, our security awareness report shows every year, quite often, the number one department that's a blocker is the communications department. And remember, we're all about communications. So we want to embed somebody from the communications team into the security team. Now, I've never found it work well the other way. So bring them into the security team, not security team into communications. Two things. One, that communications person helps bring an entirely new perspective and can help you craft the communications message. But also, since they're directionally tied to the communications team, you now have a bridge, and they can help not only craft your message, but push out your message. All right, now we've talked about two of the three C's. We've talked about communication, and we've talked about collaboration, the importance of working together. Finally, there's the third one, culture. I mean, if we're going to want to change behavior and ultimately culture, we have to know and understand what culture is. And this is something where I tend to find that security professionals or technical backgrounds really have struggle with, because it is such an abstract concept, very touchy-feely. It's very hard to even perceive culture. Behavior you can actually see. But culture is not just behavior. Culture are people's attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions. This diagram I have here, I stole, with permission, from Lance Hyden's book, People-Centric Security. And Lance Hyden, I think, brings a wonderful perspective. PhD in social science, so he understands the concept of culture. But he also worked for the CIA on their human intel group, so he understands the importance of cybersecurity from a human perspective. And what he's done in this very simple diagram is he said, think of culture as an iceberg. And what you see above the water are the behaviors. But what you don't see below the water are those beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, values, assumptions, whatever words you want to call. And to change culture, we have to first understand the culture. So what is your organization's culture? And remember, I mentioned A, human resources is a great resource to learn about that. But B, if you are an organization of any size, you actually probably have more than one culture. Culture can be generationally driven, older generation, younger generation. It can be driven by what nation they come from. Asia will have a different culture than South America. It can be department or role-based. The geeks in software development will have a very different culture than sales or marketing. So you're going to have probably an overall organizational culture and then many more subcultures within your organization. But ultimately, we first have to understand A, what culture is. B, know and understand your organization has a very unique culture. C, that culture is really going to drive how you do an awareness program. All right? The culture of, say, a government organization or a defense industry organization will be very different than the culture of, say, a retail or a technical company. So in other words, think of, Lockheed Martin versus Nike. I happen to know the people running the awareness programs for both organizations, night and day. So as security professionals, we have to understand we need to know the culture and how this will impact. So what I like to do is this. For our world, I simplify this. This is very simplistic, but it works. To really, at a high level, understand your culture. Is it conservative or is it outgoing? Now, if you have a conservative culture, or let's start with outgoing. An outgoing culture would be somebody like a marketing firm, technology, university, and that would be like a Nike, a Facebook, hotel chains, things like that. These are organizations that also tend to have younger generation, higher tolerance for risk. They're willing to try more things. So what I tend to find is outgoing cultures prefer, they want to use technology in their awareness program. They want to use social media. They want to use mobile devices. They quite often prefer to watch content as opposed to read it. Think YouTube generation. They like cheeky, sassy, funny, entertaining, things along those lines. And quite often they want the ability to consume content not only during work hours, but whenever they want, morning, night, lunch, weekend, whatever. So these awareness programs tend to be more fun, more outgoing, more visible, things like that, as opposed to a more conservative culture. Financials, and like I said, insurance, defense, law firms, these tend to prefer subdued and professional. If you tried a funny newsletter or a humorous video, they would think it's unprofessional, and as a result, they're not going to pay attention to it. Had that happen in a law firm. They may often prefer to read content as opposed to watching, especially when you're dealing with different generations. They may prefer to work with people. In other words, they don't want some interactive training with an iPad. They want a lunch and learn where they can talk to people. And they tend to be more policy driven. Now, I bet a lot of you are going, oh, no, my culture is probably more conservative. And I tend to find that in my classes, webinars, customers, things like that. Think about it. If you're conservative, you don't like risk. And if you don't like risk, you're more likely to have a security awareness program. The advantage you have in a conservative culture is I bet you have a lot of training programs or awareness programs, ethics, sexual harassment, safety, and I bet to date most of them have been very conservative, which means boring. So what you can do with your awareness program is just pump up the volume a little bit. Just be a little edgy, a little humorous, a little different, and you will stand out tremendously. So you actually have an advantage if you have a conservative culture. But either way, you have to know and understand your culture. Now, as you get bigger, these different cultures begin to become a big deal, and we have to be sensitive to different cultures. So things that you probably don't want to include in your awareness program are things like politics or religion. Though I did have in one case, I was teaching a class and had a student raise his hand and go, actually, Lance, we are going to include religion in our awareness program. And I sat there and said, you know what? There is no way where I can think of where you can successfully pull that off. And I challenged my student to prove me wrong. And I challenged him to show me how he can actually use religion in his awareness program. He then replied, he was the CIO of the Mormon Church. And I was quickly proven wrong. So there's always unique exceptions, but in general, politics and religion probably want to keep out. And then humor. Humor is always a challenge in that it's an amazing way to communicate. It's a wonderful way to engage. But what you think is hysterically funny, others may not think so funny, or may actually think it's offensive. Just think about it. College humor, if you went to a university and a bunch of students put together a funny video, That probably would not fly in a bank or a government organization. So if you're going to use humor, A, bounce it off your advisory board. Use that voice of the customer. But B, be very careful, especially if you're translating or rolling that out into another culture. One of my favorite examples of how cultures could go wrong is in the United States. I was working with a customer and they told me this story of how in the United States they were going to roll out a global awareness program, but this was for sexual harassment. And they rolled the program out and it totally blew up in the United Kingdom. It went all wrong. And I asked him why. Well, he said they decided to call it the Sexual Harassment Awareness Group. In other words, that was the people going to roll it out. So the acronym came out to be SHAG, which in the United States, culturally, is not an issue. If you are based in the United Kingdom, that could be an issue. So always check with your advisory board as you start going global. And then by global, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, Canada, United States, they may speak the same language, but culturally very different. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. This was just a very high-level overview of the key element being the most common cause I've been seeing for years now, and we have the data to back it up from the Security Awareness Report to include the new one, which is not even out yet. It's the soft skills where we're suffering and making the mistake. When people don't change behavior, we can't blame them. We need to look at ourselves. And the problem is we're either failing to motivate people and or we're failing to make security easy. Instead, it's confusing, overwhelming, intimidating. Remember our passwords example. By leveraging the 3 C's of awareness, communication, collaboration, and culture, we can and will change behavior and ultimately change culture. I'm seeing it happen all over the world, and that is why I'm so excited. All right, I just wanted to leave with you with some additional resources to help you out. We have a 2-day Security Awareness Summit coming up in August, where real security awareness officers share their stories learned and how you can take those lessons and apply them to your own organization. And the reason I'm so excited is we just announced the call for presentations for that summit. So if you want to present or speak at that summit, we'd love to hear from you. I also, as I mentioned earlier, teach a 2-day class on building awareness programs. We have the awareness report coming up, and every month a webcast like this. And you can learn more at that URL below. All right, so thank you so much. Like I said, if nothing else, read one of those books I recommended. Very easy to read. We need just to develop